something extraordinary is happening, until it happens to you, you don't know how to judge it. And that was how I was. Somebody told me the story I'm telling you, 5, 6 years ago, I would be like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. But now I'm like, oh no, it's happening, I'm like, I don't care what anyone thinks. I've experienced it.
Which kind of tells us that who knows what could be down the pike for any of us.
Yeah, I think there's so much coming that we can't even imagine what's going to happen.
What if all the rich, diverse journeys of our souls are how God explores the universe as us? And what if we awaken to that? What then? Come join us as we open the door to all the adventures of being human in these times on this beautiful planet we call home. Hi, I'd like to welcome you all to the show and to welcome my co-host Seven Dawes. And we're going to talk today with Adrian Fisher, who I met in 2020 in the most interesting way when I was out doing a garage sale. And I asked him, what do you think about all this COVID stuff? And he said, how much time do you have? And proceeded to tell me a fascinating story. We've been friends ever since. Adrian is a man who walks the world between the 3D world in business. He's got a successful business in South America that he's run for many years, and the world of the cosmic noosphere, or whatever we want to call it. Adrian's learned how to connect with beings from other dimensions, it seems. And so, Adrian, could you tell us a little bit about that story, about how you came to be in this strange space, an interesting, very fascinating space of connecting with extraterrestrials, with other dimensional beings, and with some sense of what's happening in the world and what's going to be happening in the world?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Susan, for having me on your show here. And it's been a very interesting story over the years. So yes, I've been in business for a long time now. Different businesses, tech companies. I have businesses in South America and I have businesses in the United States. And up until I had an experience about 6 months before COVID, I consider myself a pretty normal guy. I didn't have long hair and all this stuff I do now. I was pretty, tight knit. And basically what happened is I was in my condo in Scottsdale about 6 months before COVID started.
Mm-hmm.
It's the middle of the afternoon, and suddenly I was taken into what I consider a spaceship, and I was shocked and didn't understand what was going on, and I didn't have any context for it.
And you told me before that it seemed very tangible to you, as real as this world here.
For me, it was crystal clear. It was something that I was shocked. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't know where I was. It took me a while to sort of piece it together. But it was very clear. There was a person that came in, a woman that looked human. And she came up to me and she smiled, and it seemed like she knew me. And she said, "Hey, we're gonna work on your energy, and we're gonna sort of fix something, and you're going to remember, who you've been and all these different things." And she just said that sort of like nonchalantly and walked behind me and gave me a hug, which made no sense. And as soon as she did that, there was like a box of light that opened up in front of me, and I'd never seen anything like it. And I was staring at this, like, what am I looking at? And she let me go, and I flew right through it.
Oh.
And I was flying through a tube of light, which it felt like I was being sucked through a vacuum cleaner. I hadn't seen all these sci-fi movies until recently, so now I would say it'd be like Star Trek or something, where they're like warped, or I don't know. It felt super crazy.
Like warp speed.
And yeah, it just felt like I was flying through a tube of light. And then it stopped suddenly, and I was laying on a table, and there were beams of light around me, and they were bigger than me, and they were so bright. I couldn't really see them. I could just sort of see the outlines of them. It was like hurting my eyes. And then I asked, "Is this really happening?" And they said, "Yes, this is happening." And then I got scared, and the next thing I knew, I was back in my house. So the whole first thing that happened was very fast. To me, it felt like 2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
but very long minutes, I guess, in a way.
Was there any communication about
Impact.
what this is about, or what was? I remember you said something about you got some.
At that time, at that very moment, no, it was just like, we're going to fix you up, and boom. Next thing you know, there's beams of light, them flying through tunnels.
Mhm.
It didn't make any sense to me. But I had been meditating. I'd been on this process, which I didn't like connect the dots, for about 6 months before I went vegan. I was doing a lot of meditation. I was doing a lot of yoga, and I was doing that just to like for stress management, because I was an executive.
Mhm.
And I was just using Headspace, and I wasn't doing anything fancy. Um, so I think maybe I was at a point where maybe I was ready for that, or I could perceive that. Um, but after, when I would meditate, I could see some beings of light, um, who told me they were part of like some council, they were Arcturian. Um, and I could talk to them in a way. And so that's how it started. So then I started asking questions and questions,
Mhm.
and I got this sort of big story in the beginning.
What was
And
the story in brief?
well, at the very beginning, it was like, hey, in 6 months, they're going to lock down the whole world for a few years, and that's going to change everything. The world will be a completely different place by 2030. And um, I didn't understand what they meant. That was sort of the first message. And, so I was really confused and trying to understand more of that.
Mhm.
And that sort of set me off on a journey to figure out what was going on with me. It wasn't just me as well. My partner at the time was also taking, and some other people I knew in my sort of like immediate circle all had experiences within about a week period.
Huh.
And
They remember those experiences as well.
yeah, I moved to Sedona. I stayed here. I had offices in Chile, and I had offices in Scottsdale. I closed those down, bought a place here, and sort of went remote, and did all that stuff during COVID. And during that time, I sort of grew my ability to speak to them. So I took some channeling classes. I went to a school called Delphi to sort of figure out how to turn it off, because I didn't really want to experience that all the time. I was very open.
Uh-huh.
So I could sort of turn it off, turn it on, and learned a little bit about this, because I didn't come from a very spiritual background or a religious background or anything. So for me, it was all very shocking, very new, and those experiences didn't really stop. So
Mhm.
over the years, I've had a lot of different experiences. For me, it sort of changed from being something about ETs to more about, um, what's really going on, the universe, our higher selves. There's guides, there's angels, there's ETs, there's positive beings, negative beings, there's God. It's all sort of happening, and we're part of this really big story that we knew nothing about. At least for me, I
Yeah, most
did
of us.
not.
Yeah.
We always question what's going on, but like
Right.
I did actually peek behind the covers, and that was sort of what happened over the last 5 years. Is
Mhm.
that ability to sort of look a little bit more has increased.
Mhm.
So with that, I saw an original timeline, between now and 2030, where there was a bunch of events that were going to happen. And I saw COVID about 6 months before it happened. When it happened, I was shocked. I couldn't really believe it, but it
Mhm.
was happening. I saw many things in my personal life before they happened, and they happened. People I was going to meet, relationships that didn't work out or worked out, financial things with my company. Um, I started seeing the big timeline for humanity, though, which was sort of, the energy was going to shift because the earth was going to split. So there's this big idea that I didn't, took me a while to sort of understand what they're trying to tell me. Because again, I wasn't in some kind of new age like
Right,
community
circles. Yeah.
thing. Yeah, I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Tell me that Earth was going to split. I thought it was literally going to explode or something.
Yeah.
But they said eventually the world would split between people who were, more loving, more inclusive, more happy, going towards growth and creation, and people who were more destructive and sad. And so like sort of lower energies and higher energies, and the split was going to happen, sometime between then and 2030. And they sort of showed me it happening, um, in this 2027 range. And they showed a bunch of people sort of
Mhm.
splitting off after 2027. And by 2030, it was literally, there was the earth as we know it was completely different.
Mhm.
And then there was like a bunch of people who maybe ascended to another plane, the new Earth, let's call it.
That's an
Uh,
idea that Dolores Cannon and others have talked about. Sometimes they call it the bifurcation.
yeah, so I
Love
saw
that, yeah.
that in many different ways, and it took me a while to sort of piece it together.
Yeah.
And along that timeline, I saw a lot of events where it was the 2 years people were locked up, and it was pretty rough. And then there was a year where people were it was over and people were happy about that.
Mhm.
Um, and then there was but they started to question it around the end of that year. And then the next year, people started to really question it, but all these conspiracies were sort of getting shut down. They were being labeled, in different ways, and they weren't really making it to the mainstream or anything like that. And then I saw at the end of that year, things would sort of spin off the rails, and that's sort of where we are now.
Mhm.
Uh, and when I looked into it, I saw that there was going to be a big upsets during elections, and that would lead to people being completely fragmented. In 25, the economies would go on for a couple years. They wouldn't crash or anything like that, but people were in distress. And those conspiracies grew louder and louder until about by 27, they were
Mhm.
mainstream things about COVID, about things that happened. And sort of everyone started to wake up very fast, and they were very angry.
Mhm.
And that led to some kind of almost, it looked like a war.
Was it
Um,
like a civil war, or was it
I don't know. It
not
felt
like
like
that? Some kind of.
the whole world was warring, but against their own governments.
Mhm.
And then at the point, there was some kind of, I don't know, if some kind of nuclear exchange or something like that, but there was a big blackout in the Northern Hemisphere. There was no power, there was no electricity, internet, and then that's when that split happened. So that was the original timeline I saw.
Yes.
And as you were talking, me and you were talking the other night, um, about 2 weeks ago, I felt a huge shift in the energy. I felt that I had jumped a timeline. And when I sort of inquired into it, they said, no, the whole collective hit like a frequency, and it sort of jumped an octave. We
Mhm.
didn't go into another dimension, but we jumped within this dimension a few octaves of like frequency, I guess. And that means we jumped into a new timeline. It's like much more positive.
A more positive version. This is
Yeah.
before Trump shooting, correct?
Yeah. And well, this was about a week before.
Mhm.
And then when I saw the Trump shooting, I was like shocked like everyone else, but I had seen during that original timeline that it looked like he did die.
Mhm.
So I was sort of shocked that he didn't. I thought that was wild, actually.
Do you attribute that to your changed timeline?
I feel like it is. I feel like that's one of the things a lot of the things that I saw, I feel like they'll still happen, but they won't happen the same way. Um, I saw, like, for example, a bird flu thing coming in the winter this year. And I saw it being pretty bad on that timeline, like just a month ago. And
Mhm.
now I see still happening, but I see it less bad.
Mhm.
Um, things like that. And the thing with Trump, if you think about it, would have been pretty bad.
It would have been very
Uh,
chaotic and probably led to civil war, or certainly a lot of.
yeah, it would. I saw it take a few years before it actually broke out into that kind of thing. But it was like very bad. It did look like they suspended the election and all kinds of things.
It did look like there was no election.
That's what I saw. The
And
first,
others have been saying that too.
yeah. So now I see that it looks like it looks like Trump will win. It's going to be a bunch of shenanigans between now and then. Um, and it's not about sort of politics, just what I'm seeing.
Um,
Um, so I guess we'll find out, obviously. But it does look like the timeline that I saw was much better. There was a better economy. People weren't as upset. There was less fear, and more people ascended because they weren't in so much fear. Um,
Well, you say they ascended because what did you say?
I saw this split that happens in 27, and originally I just saw a very small portion of humanity actually ascend to that. It's called fifth dimension. And now I see more, maybe double. And it's not so much about just what happened with Trump or anything. It's more about like the world's more stable. People are in less fear over from now to 27. So even
mhm.
though bad things will be happening, they won't be as bad. And that will like help people
Mhm.
sort of get to where they need to go. So, and I also saw that there wasn't the blackouts, or if there are, they're not as bad, things like
Uh-huh.
that. So it looks like whatever was happening was man-made, but at the time I couldn't really tell. So that's sort of what I've seen over the years. I started a company called Awaken.world, and
Mm-hmm.
that helps people learn how to like connect to their own guides to channel for themselves, so they don't have to listen
Mm-hmm.
to us really. They can get
Right.
their own
And
information.
I'll put some links below. You've had a lot of really interesting videos through
Yeah.
the years on
Yeah.
that.
And so we had one class that was an advanced channeling class that I had created that was paid. I've gone ahead and given that for free to everyone on that website. So, now's the time for people to get their own information, to connect, to figure out how to talk to their own guides, to learn about
Mm-hmm.
what's really going on. And so I sort of made that because in my journey, I came from sort of a more corporate situation to not knowing anything, not knowing where to look. And so I wanted to create that for other
Mm-hmm.
people.
Do you have a sense that when you
in that
talk to your
space.
guide, when you're channeling your guides, that you're not sure who you're getting information from, and that
To some
they
extent.
sometimes it might be, like bad information, sometimes it's good information. Is there a sense like that, or is it always
Well,
clear?
at this point, it's pretty clear. Um, but as I began that journey, I didn't really know anything besides I could talk to people in my meditation. Um, and so sometimes it was confusing, sometimes it wasn't good beans, really, and sometimes it was bad information. So that beginning, that first year was pretty scary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I went to like this school to sort of figure out what was going on and to learn how to control it
Mhm.
more. I took channeling classes and different things. So over the years, I started to like find a better way to do it. And then I've taken that way that was given to me that makes a really nice, clear connection and get made that available. But the reality is that when you open up to spirit, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Your perception can vary, and it's hard to know who you're speaking with. So
Mm-hmm.
that discernment it's really about time, trust, connection, listening to those messages, being able to feel the different energies,
Mm-hmm.
seeing if the stuff they say comes true, right?
Yeah.
That's the
It's quite an
spirit.
exploration that you've been on. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you've learned
Yeah.
a lot as just for yourself. This is a spiritual
Yeah.
being.
And for me, I take it with a grain of salt.
That's one of the things I love in talking with you is
You
you're so
know?
down to earth about it. Just
Yeah,
yeah.
because I think we need to be real about it. The fact is that spirit is very close to us and we're more connected than ever. Um, but I think a lot of people don't have any kind of training. They maybe don't have those processes on how to connect clearly, but they
Mm-hmm.
are receiving information. I believe most of the psychics are receiving information and the channelers. The question is from whom,
Mm-hmm.
and or they interpreting correctly. The way that channeling works is that it's so fast when you're a channel. They're using your own brain, they're using your own thoughts, your own vocabulary, and they're almost seeding you thought form as quickly as they can. So and then you sort of translate them automatically. That's how channeling works. So it depends on how you feel, who you are, your vibration, all these different things. How high you can reach up, and who you can connect with are all part of your state of being, your vibration, things like that. So, and there's levels, close to Earth, it's a little hairy. There's a lot of the beings are just like here on Earth. There's good people and bad people.
Uh-huh.
Let's call it. They're not. No one's really good or bad, but there's people who are more confused than others.
What some
And
would call the astral plane, I imagine.
yeah, so that astral plane it's
Lower
still
astral.
under the veil. The fourth dimension's under a veil still. So they're in confusion as well. So as you go higher and higher, it seems to get more pure.
Mm-hmm.
Time doesn't work the same way. So soon could be tomorrow, it could be 6 months from now, it could be a year from now.
Yeah.
So there's all those things that you sort of keep in mind and all that stuff. But what I find fascinating for me is, I'm in tech and I'm building all these crazy things and I've made a good career out of it. And then I have this experience and I can't believe it, honestly. I'm like,
Mhm.
there's no way this is happening. There's no way this is true. I must be crazy. Maybe I'm having a seizure or something. But then it happened, to people really close to me at the same time. And
That was
and
fortuitous.
it was extremely. And so, you know, and then I met other people along my path that were like that. And I thought to myself, if this is really happening, this is probably the most interesting thing happening on Earth, honestly. And that's where I should take it serious. I mean, it happened to me, and let's find out what's going on. So
You're referring to the interactivity with the non-physical beings, right? The metaphysical world.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's ETs and they're obviously interacting with us and they're obviously doing something. What is that something? I wanted to know.
Mhm.
Uh, so
It does seem like it's the biggest news around. I mean, it would be a huge shift for humanity to have open contact with ETs.
it's been a huge shift for me. And it's not like they're landing in my front yard and saying hi
Mhm.
or anything. The
Yeah.
experiences I've had have been very few and far in between, but very powerful.
Mhm.
And it seems to be, every year or two, there's something. Um, and then it takes me a long time to integrate it, to be honest. It's
Yeah.
like, think about it for a long time. So, but that communication, that daily communication, that via channeling, let's call it, even when I'm in my meditation, it's pretty clear at this point. So I do trust it, but I always um, get what I can and then sit back and sort of see what happens and
Mhm.
take the guidance that feels right to me, and the
Yeah.
rest
It sounds
turns
like,
out a lot of times to be true, but maybe I don't want it to be true.
oh yeah, it sounds like you approach it with a certain amount of kind of the witness state or a certain amount of non-attachment. It's just like, okay, this is interesting. Okay.
Well, I think through my journey at least, and maybe this is for other people who channel or have had like these big openings. I think in the very beginning, it's super wild to be able to see what could happen in 6 months or, next week,
Mhm.
and it be true, once, twice, three times, four times. Suddenly it's like you think it's always going to be true. Um, and so you can get super attached to ideas very quickly.
Mhm.
Um, and that might not be what's needed for you, and the world changes and there's multiple people change their minds, we have free will. So I learned some hard lessons in the beginning because I was seeing so clearly so much.
Mhm.
um, and I was focused on like small things that were maybe going to happen, or this, or things in my personal life, and I realized that that's not actually important.
Yeah.
Actually important is being in the story, living your life. Maybe you can see a snippet from 2 episodes away, but you don't really know how the whole thing develops all the time. And that's the part that is important,
So
you know?
say more about that. You mean being in the story? Do you mean like being present
Yeah.
with what's
Yeah.
happening now?
You know, the reality is most people, and this is not even coming from a spiritual place. It's coming just from my life experience. We're really hard on ourselves. We're just beating ourselves over and over. About something we did 2 years ago or whatever, something we said at a party, or, we said the wrong thing to our partner or made the wrong move in business. So we spend so much time in the past, so much energy, right? And then we're future projecting, like you've heard this, we're always thinking about the future, what's going to happen. If you can channel, oh, it's even worse. You start predicting the future, and like you want to see everything you can.
Yeah.
So all this energy is being spent in these places, and the only really place where you can create is in that present moment, right? It's almost like it goes both ways. It changes past and present and future.
Excuse me. So what are you saying changes both ways? That when you have
Everything that we're doing now is echoing through time in both directions, not just.
direction.
So we automatically can only think if I do this, then tomorrow will happen that. But it's not really linear. It's sort of echoing in, like, maybe let's call it, in a circle in past.
If
Sort
I
of
could
loop.
use an analogy, I wonder if it's a little bit like, let's say the whole thing was like in some way a movie, and maybe originally the movie was kind of, a violent movie, or it had a certain plot, and it had, coming from the past and going in the future, had a certain kind of theme. And then as you evolve, perhaps maybe the movie becomes more gentle or more insightful, and then
Exactly.
that's going to affect the whole quality of the movie.
Well, just think about, like, in your real life. Do you remember what you had for breakfast a week ago?
Nope. I can guess.
Right? Yeah. And so, and there's all these events in our lives where if we're focused on, they persist, they're there. We remember what we did that one time 6 months ago. But if you forgot about it, it'd be like your breakfast. You wouldn't even remember. And that's sort of what we're doing. We're rewriting our own narrative, and it is actually going through time, but it doesn't matter. It only matters what you remember in the present moment, because like literally it's like not there. And so that's what's interesting. The future's not there. The past isn't really there. The present's here. But when you are able to sort of see time in a different way, through help of your guides or through your own psychic abilities, you realize that you can see timelines. You can see into the past, from a present moment point of view, and you can see into the future probabilities based off current energy. So, when you look into the future, you can see things that are most likely to happen if things go as they're most likely to go, right? It's like if the balls keep rolling downhill and nobody whacks them out of the way, it's probably going to be that way.
And it's complicated because there are so many people involved, beings involved.
Right. And that's where like big events are easier to see because it's collective energy. So they show up on these timelines very strongly. And in your personal life, it's maybe a little bit more tricky, because there's maybe less energy there. So it's interesting, but what I find fascinating is that this is even possible. If you can hit the thing and be accurate 1, 2, 3 times, that shouldn't happen. Period.
What does that say about reality?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Is my experience after this 5 years, and I'm sure it will continue to change, is that we're in a created reality. It is there's like God just creating ways to experience himself, and that's all of creation. And there's all these complex ways that it works, and that we know just a tiny bit of through science or through our own explorations. We're finding these things out as we go, but it's vast and it's almost dreamlike.
Yeah. Could you say it's almost like I've been seeing it more this way too. It's like we are, how could we be otherwise? We are like fractals of God, experiencing zillions and zillions of realities through zillions and zillions of eyes or beings, lifetimes, and to learn, to experience, to expand the possibilities of what can be, I guess.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I saw. So, for me, it started and it was like, oh my God, aliens. And then it was like, oh my God, like it's way bigger than aliens. What's an alien anyway? It's just another soul on its journey. I mean, it's different from us. So yeah, I saw it as it's almost like these sparks of light coming off this one point, that was creating all creation. That point, you can call it source or God, but there's like one individual who fractioned himself or herself or itself into everything. To experience duality, to experience a trinity, to experience multiplicity, to experience self from every different point of view in every different way. And so we're like on this journey and we're waking up to it, and it's wild.
It is.
I find it like the Wild West,
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing too. I mean, it's quite an adventure. If you get too wrapped up in it and take it too seriously, you can get quite engaged in it. It can be painful. There can be a lot of suffering in it, but then the more it seems to me that we can step back and just take the point of view we're just talking about, the more it becomes just more like a fun game.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing in this split of duality, on Earth, it's like super intense. And the reality is it's all God. There's nothing outside of that one point. All of this is a way to experience self in different states of awareness, essentially. There's darker aspects of society and humanity are in less awareness. And these higher aspects are more awareness. And so once we become aware that we even can be aware, it's like you don't know what you don't know kind of thing.
Yeah.
You can start to really choose how you want to experience your life, to experience your own emotions, your own interpretations of whatever's happening to you, around you.
Adrian, are you finding that this process is showing you personally maybe more how to manifest what you'd like to manifest in your life?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, To really manifest stuff here, it's work, and I think in the spiritual community, it's all, if you think about it, what happened.
Uh-huh.
There's a certain aspect of truth to that. If you think of a butterfly, you will see one eventually. It could be in 1 minute, it could be in 2 days, but you'll probably tune into that and you will see it or will somehow manifest for you. Now, if you want to build something complex like a software company or something like that,
Right.
um,
You don't just snap your fingers. Huh?
well, you do have to go through a process. You think about it, you imagine it, you start to think about how people could use it. Would people work there? Could it be profitable? So you go through all these things like business stuff. And then you arrive at a conclusion of like, well, if this existed, and if I had a couple $1 million to build it, and if I could find the right people to do it, and if I could get my message out to this base of customers, over the next 5 years, yeah, I can make some money. And then you're manifesting, but then you suddenly have to go out and do those things that you saw,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, go hire the people, go raise the money, go do, go build the stuff, see where you're at in 5 years.
Yeah.
Be consistent. And so I think there's this sort of disconnect sometimes, but it is almost that simple. But when you want to build something complex, you take that simplicity and you keep it going, until you've seen the whole thing and then you take the actions. So the way it was explained to me was, and I'll just share this because I find it fascinating. There's divine mind.
Yes.
Things move like this. There's divine mind and it's creative. And then there's local mind. Let's think about like your aura, your own mind, and things sort of get seeded into there, or you think things and they go into there. And then from there, it goes down into the desire body. You've thought about it enough that you start to desire it. And once you start to desire it, it goes into the emotional body. And then once it's really strong there, then you actually do action. And then you start to actually, do the thing that you thought about,
Do what
desired, felt it, and then did it.
you
And so
need to do physically to make it happen.
basically do it. Yeah. And so think sometimes, and from some of the spiritual stuff I've seen, they talk about one level, but it's actually all the levels in this world. In the higher realms, you just think of something and it just shows up.
Yeah.
You don't have to desire it that much. So we're not in those realms. So we're in a realm where we have to like use all of our facilities to bring stuff into existence.
One time when we were talking, you said something to me that I thought was really interesting. I wanted to see what your perspective would be on that. Now, you were saying something along the lines of, actually, we humans are pretty evolved beings, and most of us are still in the spirit world, but we have to be actually quite powerful to create the illusion, if you will, that we're in. In other words, it is such a complex, tangible, seeming world here.
And that's almost what I was just saying. You really have to use all of your facilities. You have to figure out how to take something all the way down from, the uncreated to the created in this world. And you do that in your relationships, you do that in work, you do that when you create something, or if you're an artist, the music is inside of you, the painting is inside of you, but then it has to get onto the the canvas, right? It has to go through the guitar or whatever. And that is not easy. This is not easy. There's so many places where maybe we're underdeveloped in our abilities. So we come to places like this to learn that, to feel it, to not just theorize, to actually feel what it feels like to get what you want. And what does it feel like to not get what you want? And to figure out where things went wrong or where you had no control over a situation, so you're in the sea of actually experiencing your thoughts instead of just thinking of them. It's a very different world. And so I sort of, over time, I started to figure that out. And I, would look back at my businesses and look back at things I'd built. So I wonder if I could do this in a better way, like I actually like to really work here, how can we create a better environment, better product, better customer experience, better in my own personal life? How would I like to live? How could I design a life that's interesting and fun for myself and for my friends or whatever?
Earlier, you mentioned in the 5D, or I think it was, that you don't have to try so hard. You just think of something and it appears. And I was wondering, did you experience that? Is that something you experienced or something you were told about or became aware of? Or
Bit of both.
How do you know that?
I've had some experiences where I wasn't in this dimension, let's call it. and I felt it as things were more mental in some ways. You sort of think of them, um, and that would make them more manifest. Now, I didn't have an experience of thinking of an apple and being like, boop, showing up. But sometimes in meditation, in these higher meditations, you're there, yeah, I can do that. And I think anyone can do that. It's almost like your imagination is creating stuff that you can interact with, and other people can interact with these thought forms. But when we discard those things, those non-physical experiences, because we're in this world and we're like, well, I was just imagining crazy stuff.
Mhm.
Maybe, maybe not. Right. So how would you know? You know, do you know what computer code is making this Zoom call work? No,
Mhm.
you have no idea. You're just doing it. So, those are thought forms. Software is a thought form. People think them and then they write them, and they're not even really anywhere besides a recorded thought, compounded, and then we reuse them. That's what we're doing. So, when you work in that sort of space, you start to be like, oh, I see what's happening here. And so in some of these higher worlds, I think it's things are different. Maybe you can create stuff easier, but there's less satisfaction
Why would there be less satisfaction? It's like less tangible, less
because
more
there was less
tangible.
effort, there was less emotion,
Uh-huh.
there was less, savor in the moment. There was less not getting it the first time, and it took
Yeah.
you a couple of years. So sometimes here, when you win, the wins are big and the losses are big.
Yeah.
And I think we discount how incredible that is in some ways.
Hmm.
We complain a lot, like I complain, and but I have a feeling that in the higher worlds it's a little different. I think they're beautiful probably and very nice. And I definitely want to experience that. But I do get the feeling that there's something really pretty crazy happening here, and maybe not very good sometimes.
Uh-huh.
But I also think it's also amazing at
Yeah.
the same time.
It's a real gift. I mean, a lot of people have said that there are just millions of souls lined up waiting to experience this Earth game or this reality that we're in now. That it is quite a ride.
Yeah, that's what I heard too, because there's not many places like this. These dimensions, in some ways, at least from my perspective, are artificially induced in some ways. Most of the planets are higher vibrational, and I think Earth is too. I was sort of shown that this was something a little artificial, um, but that also makes it interesting and exciting
Hmm.
in some crazy way to be of service. I saw in other planets, let's say it was a fifth dimensional planet or an eighth dimensional planet or something, all the beings and animals were sort of at that frequency. There wasn't no 10th dimensional people and third dimensional people on the same planet.
Hmm.
Earth, there's all kinds of dimensional people here. There's 12th dimensional people here in a body and
Hmm.
almost second dimensional people in a body, and they're all interacting with each other and they all don't know who they are. And it's super crazy. And I think for these higher dimensional beings, there probably is a huge line to come here. And they want to eat pizza and they want to check out what's going on. They want to be of service, help humanity as well. Because where they're at, that everyone is sort of the same, right? So this will be a place where you can experience scary stuff and delicious food and
Yeah. Like you have to ask, like, why would
drama.
somebody want to, go to a scary movie or something, for example? Well, a lot of people do like to see that. And by contrast, when the hero wins or when it turns out all right, there's a sense of relief and it's very tangible.
Right. And so my suspicion that there's that desire. I don't
Yeah.
have any facts or anything. I don't have any facts about any of it. Just
No.
my experience, really. I can't prove any of it, but
I wonder
for
if
me,
you'd
it's
be,
very real.
Adrian, I wonder if you'd be willing to share, or if you think would have any value to share a recent experience that you had with abduction with your girlfriend in South America.
So I did have, yeah, I can share that.
It's kind of
So
creepy.
these ET experiences I've had before, they were crystal clear, but it felt like my light body was taking. Didn't feel like I was physically taking anywhere in some way. My consciousness was taken and I was there. But they were very real for me and for the other people that experienced them. And but I have no idea if I've been taken physically, and maybe I have before. When you're asleep or something. but I don't remember any of that. I just remember the ones that I've had. And
And your
about
the first experience you had years ago, that was clearly a physical experience that you had. Is that how you said?
it felt physical, but
Mhm.
I don't think it was. I think it was a part of me. There's physicality goes from the 12th dimension down is what I've seen. And so your etheric body is considered physical. It's just not as dense as this. So
Mhm.
my etheric body was taken. So in some way, yes, it was physical. I felt physical. I felt like I could touch everything and feel everything and and it was very clear to me.
But if a camera had been there, it probably would have shown you still sitting there.
It probably would just show me passed out because that's what it felt like because I
Yeah.
woke up, like
Uh-huh.
what just happened. I was wide awake and then suddenly I was gone. And when I came back, my whole body was there was this sensation almost when you hit your elbow.
Uh-huh.
I felt that for a second and then boom, I was gone. And then when I came back, my body still felt it was like just buzzing. It felt like when you slept on your arm or something, but my whole body, it felt a little scary and dangerous.
We're talking about your earlier experiences back.
First experience,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So I thought maybe I had a seizure or some fantasy medical thing or whatever.
Mhm.
But then they took my wife 2 days later, but hers was seemed to be more physical. She had some things like implanted into her arm,
Mm.
like that. And so, and so like, and the way they explain it to me is like a lot of times they're just in humans, they adjust their etheric body and then they put that back in, and your physical body basically reads that. That's actually where you are. You're not in your physical body, you're in your etheric body, and your physical body reads it
Mm.
like, like software in the computer.
Uh-huh.
So if it says, there's something in that etheric body, it would show up on your skin if it was close enough,
Mhm.
right? So we saw some stuff like that.
Well,
Um,
I've heard this idea that our body exists inside of our consciousness, that we
I
are
would
our
take it even
consciousness, our
farther.
body is something inside of that.
Yeah, and that's one way to look at it, and you can zoom it out. So imagine your field, your thought of yourself manifests you. So your aura is your mental field, and your aura is outside of you. So you could see your body as a manifestation of your thought inside of that. That's one way to look at it. If you want to go even farther, you can say there's only God. So essentially, I am God somewhere. And I've manifested the whole creation for me to experience, and of course, all the things in it and myself. So you can go both extremes, but I think they're both true. But this aspect of yourself that's inside of you, let's call it, or right around you, this etheric body, it looks like you, it feels like you. It's probably has your mental body attached to it somehow. I'm not sure how it works, but it's pretty crazy. So long story short, I've had those types of experiences as far as I can tell. The experience I had 2 months ago, I was in a small town called Alto Paraíso in Brazil. It's like High Paradise would be in English. And it's funny. It has like little ETs and stuff around the town. It's sort of known for that kind of stuff. And it's like a very spiritual spot. It's one of the most spiritual spots in Brazil. And so I went there to go check it out. And I was living there for about a few months, 1 month on, and then I spent a few weeks in the city and came back and lived another month there. And that last month, it's probably 3 months ago at this point. And that last month, it was in the middle of the night, and I had an experience that was, it felt almost stereotypical like the movies.
Uh-huh.
There was a beam of light that came through the room. My girlfriend and I were in bed, and then suddenly it got super bright. I was awake, and I saw us floating up, and I could feel us floating up through the thing very slowly. I could see her hair dangling down next to me. I was sort of scared. I was like, I can't
Yeah.
believe
What
it can't be
the heck
happening.
is going on here?
No, I mean by that point I was like, I knew what was going on. I just
Yeah.
couldn't believe it because it was very slow. It wasn't like whoom. It was,
Yeah.
and I was fully awake. So I was like, this can't be happening, man. Like, um, and then I saw like what looked like a person, like a human, saying, hey, everything's gonna be okay. We're Octurians. We're not gonna hurt you or anything. So just, stay calm. Um, and then suddenly we were in a room and it was very bright, a lot of light. and they were still like in that human sort of form looking, but it didn't feel right. Felt like they were projecting it to
Uh-huh.
me.
Like it was real or
It
something.
was like awkward. It
Huh.
was like it looked like real people, but it was awkward feeling.
Mhm.
Like if somebody was wearing a suit or something, and they didn't know what a human was like,
Oh, I see.
or like robotic,
Yeah. Okay. Like
Didn't make,
this is
yeah, it
new
didn't,
to them kind of to look like a human or something.
yeah, it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And they were talking to us telepathically, and we were in some kind of state where it felt like we were conscious, but we couldn't get too emotional. Like I felt like my emotions were dampened. Like if I got really scared, it was sort of like dampened immediately. It felt like a blanket almost. It was weird. Like I could feel my fear, and then it was like a blanket. Like
Huh.
it's okay. Or I feel like maybe I want to leave, and it's like, no, there's a blanket. It's okay. Kind of that. I never experienced anything like that. It was
Hmm.
Hmm.
other experiences weren't like that.
Was it like this blanket was something from outside yourself that you
It
didn't?
felt like psychic. It felt like they were reading my mind like instantly, and just like if I could feel that pressure on me. It felt like pressure, like a blanket.
Was it like
Um,
being controlled or like being calmed down or something? Or can you?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually. Um it felt like they were more scared of us than we were of them.
Oh, that's interesting.
You know what I mean? In some way, because they were small, small beings.
Mhm.
Eventually they showed I'm like, okay, like, can we see you? And they're like, yeah, we just didn't want to scare you. And it was like these tiny grays at first. And then I saw some other beings that were even smaller, but stocky and blue.
Huh.
And they had like these hoods on, and they had black eyes, and they're really dark blue. And I never seen anything like that, you know?
Must have seemed pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
I was like judging them a little bit, and they knew that,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
sort of
that's
laughing
fun.
at me. They knew that for me, that looked super crazy, and they were sort of smiling. Um, and so that went on for just a little bit. I don't really remember everything that was happening at that point. But at one point, they're like, hey, we're going to do some work on you, and it's going to hurt for just a few seconds. And they put us both on these tables, or they actually had us walk over and lay on them. And we were side by side. And I looked over at my partner, and I saw her screaming. Like they were doing something, she was screaming. And I like that, I was super scared.
Yeah.
I was like, whatever they're doing does not look good, And then she stopped. It was just like a few seconds. And then they're like, okay, like this. And then they told me, okay, this is going to hurt for a few seconds. And they put something in my side, and I felt it go really deep in it. It was extremely painful for about
Hmm.
2 or 3 seconds.
Hmm.
Um, and then it stopped. And and then after that, I don't remember very much. I just remember coming back down into the bed. They were like, we were floating through the thing.
Yeah.
And
Did you have any kind of a scar and like an injection point or anything?
I had like a small bruise. Like it felt like my ribs were sore a little bit. But I didn't really see anything. I saw maybe like a tiny dot or something, but it
Uh-huh.
didn't look like anything really.
Uh-huh.
And but what was interesting about it, it's like as soon as the light went away, I jumped up, it was like that light did control us somehow.
Oh, it was like a sedative almost.
Yeah, I couldn't really do anything besides what they were like sort of commanding me to do, let's call it.
Hmm.
So they
Hmm.
weren't doing it like forcefully or mean, but I could just feel like they had it under control just in case we got crazy,
Yeah. So it was like you didn't really have free will there or a choice, maybe?
Um, it felt like a mix between them just being safe.
A frightened human is probably one of the most dangerous things. It's like,
Probably.
well, they're starting to get frightened, blanket them up, okay.
Yeah, yeah, because they were actually really nice with us. Um, but you could tell that like we were definitely in fear, and that it kept sort of calming us down with whatever they
Hmm.
were doing. So I didn't feel a lot of fear. I just initially felt, but it was more mental. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I couldn't
Mhm.
feel it in the body like super scared. It just was more like I don't know if this is okay, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Oh, in
so
retrospect, do you feel like it was okay? Or I mean,
yeah,
I feel like because there are these stories about the Greys lie and they have their own agenda. Da da da. I wonder if you must agree.
It could be, you know what I mean? Could be. It's funny because I searched on the internet
Yeah,
like the next day because I never seen anything like those little blue guys.
yeah. Did you find it?
And I found something. It was in Spanish. I didn't find it in any US sites,
Hmm.
but there was an image of one of them and it said it was an Octurian. And so when I channeled on it the next day, because I wanted to know what happened, they said that they were Octurians, that they look like that, um, because they're working in these dense realms. The grays are like sort of biomechanical, and like lots of races use them because they're part of the ship almost, they're part of the infrastructure. And those little blue ones were Octurians, but they were like almost fourth and third dimensional Octurians, and they work more close to the Earth.
Hmm.
Because the other Octurians I've experienced were more human looking. So, they said there's Octurians in all the different dimensions, including here on Earth. There's humans who have Octurian souls, let's call it. So yeah, it was super crazy. But the one thing that I did notice is that I felt, and my girlfriend as well, extremely good the next day. And for about a week, we were like cool as cucumbers.
Like,
Emotionally, it was like, yeah, it was really cool.
You mentioned earlier that your girlfriend had some implants put into her. Was that during this episode that you just described with the injection in the side and the
well, he was talking about his wife.
that was
Yeah,
his wife before? Okay.
yeah. In the very beginning, I was married, and we had these experiences together, and that was an implant situation.
Uh,
But they were never negative. It was almost to enhance in some ways what we were doing. The experiences I had with the ETs, they definitely did something to me. I don't know what
I don't know why.
exactly, but I was never really the same, and I was been very open, and like those sort of gifts and abilities were online pretty quickly, and a lot of memories came back and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And with let's call my ex-wife here, she went from corporate to doing sound healing like this, and became a healer and became extremely skilled. And so it was funny because they had told me that that was for healing and for sound, and we had never even thought of those things yet, but a year later, suddenly she's an extremely good sound healer and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So, I never saw it as negative. Even this one that happened recently, I felt so great for about a week after. And what they told me that they removed a block, that humans, we have energy blocks and chakras and things like that. But over time, through our lineage, there's actual blocks in like the physical body too. There's some that, and we're receiving so many frequencies and so many upgrades and things right now that they took the opportunity to remove one. And that's why we felt so much better.
Mhm.
So I sort of believe him because I did feel great,
Yeah.
but I don't know, and that's the whole point. That's why I keep sort of, I say take everything with a grain of salt, even if it's happening to you, like
Mhm.
don't get super caught up in it, like this is obviously, we don't know what's going on in the universe. We don't know what's going on in the
Yeah.
world.
When you're channeling skills, do you apply those to these episodes with the ETs to ask, okay, what was happening there? And
So, yeah, that's what I did. The next day,
yeah,
thing I did was like, I want to know what happened. So they told me a bunch of stuff, they told me about the energy blocks and what's going on.
okay.
That we had given them permission to do that, which was funny because I think we did, but I wasn't really taking it too serious.
Was
It
that
was
like before your life kind of thing, or?
no, this was just like a few weeks before. My girlfriend was like, I think the ETs like want to like meet us or do something with us, but we need to give them permission.
Oh,
I was like, well, if they're good ETs, okay, I give them permission. And then I forgot about it. And then 2 weeks later, suddenly I was like, oh my God, this is actually happening.
Yeah.
wow, interesting.
So we had been there for 2 months and nothing happened, but you could feel the ET presence in that place. I mean, it was like, it's a pretty weird spot for
And this is
anyone.
Alta Paraíso.
Alto Paraiso is intense. It's beautiful, but it's intense. You can feel that there's a lot of energy there, spiritual energy. Um, you can almost feel that the ETs are there, but somehow you can't see them. You know, I hadn't seen really anything in 2 months, so
Do you
I
have
was
any
not
theories
surprised.
about that? Any, like maybe there's an underground connection to like a deep underground base of, with the ETs that is right there, and that's why there's more activity there? Or maybe it's some other
I can give you like
quality.
some things that like I was shown to me. We're really focused on the 3D because that's how we operate. When we want an apple, we go to the grocery store or an apple tree, we get it, we hold it in our hand, we cut it, we chew it. That's our experience. It's very physical. You don't just think of an apple and it shows up in your stomach or something, and you're done. It's everything is so physical. So we're sort of conditioned to that. So if we believe if something's here, we would see it. But when you think of dimensionality, you're thinking about frequencies. And when you think about frequencies, this call is being done over the internet wirelessly, and we don't see any of it, but we're experiencing it. It's right. It's in our experience. It's right here. And so when you think of it, some of the advanced ET technology, the stuff that you see maybe is uncloaked or less advanced, but the stuff that I experienced it could be right in your backyard and you wouldn't see it because it's phased into a different dimension, slightly different frequency. So they might be able to perceive you, but you could walk right through it and not see it.
Does the metaphor of a radio dial fit with what you're describing? Like
Yeah, in
changing
some
the
ways.
frequency a little bit?
Yeah. Imagine there was a physical structure that you changed its frequency and it was out of phase or it was in a slightly higher frequency. We can see into lower frequency, but we have a hard time seeing the higher frequency. We have a hard time seeing ultraviolet light, but we can see visible light. We can look down and see like very slow forms of light turn into like maybe sound, for example. These higher beings it seems to me that they can see you pretty clearly, but you can't see them. And so when I had the first ET or maybe second ET experience, I was taken on a ship, but I was in the fifth dimension and I was looking out and there were ships all around Earth and I could see Earth.
Mhm.
And, you know, I was there for about an hour and they explained a lot of stuff to me. And they told me that if we were to look with our telescopes and all of our scientific machines, we couldn't see any of those ships that were right there because they were in the fifth dimension. The frequency was different.
Mhm.
And that those ships that they had built, they were had consciousness within them. They were ensouled in some ways.
Mhm.
Um, and some of these grays and things like that, they were almost biomechanical machines, but they also had souls. Not all of them do, but these ones did.
I had an experience with my husband in October, I think it was 2021. We were looking out the window at night. It was a very dark night, about 8:30, and we saw this row of lights on a nearby mountain that was larger than the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
And they were very bright, equidistant, all the same size. And after a while they started dancing back and forth. And
Mhm.
it felt like they could see us inside our house. It felt like there was a conscious connection. It was a very strange thing. And then
And
it went dark after about 10 minutes.
and I think this is the thing that we only trust the experience that we have, and so when you start talking about these crazy experiences, they're so far from what most people experience. We discard them, right? We're like, oh, that's not possible. I would argue that it is.
Mhm.
Um, those beings could send you lights intentionally if they wanted to, or for all of Sedona to see. For them to feel your consciousness focused on them, they could feel it and focus theirs right back.
Mhm.
And that would be happening in a way that would be perceptive to you, but for them, crystal clear, for example.
Uh-huh.
So it's like my experience is that, for example, I was not psychic most of my life. I was running tech companies and maybe I had some good intuition, or I would get an idea that I don't know how I got it in the shower, and like everyone,
Yeah.
especially people who create things and create software, they're pretty creative people or artists. I don't know where they got that song from, but that was to the extent of my abilities. In just 5 years, it's got to the point where it's almost ridiculous.
Hmm.
If I want to tune in, I can feel somebody's emotions or their thoughts, or sort of see where they're at. Sometimes if there's a being, I can feel it very strongly next to me, perceive it, maybe even see it sometimes. I can feel my chakras, when they're connected to something. And it's like I have all these feelings and sensations that I didn't think were possible. I didn't think we were capable of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm experiencing them, and so sometimes, that's overwhelming, and I don't want to experience them. So I don't. I turn them off. In some ways, I sort of back away from that energy. But if that's possible for a human right now, what are these ETs? Who knows what's possible in a million years of evolution?
Mm-hmm.
That was my experience because when I was with them, the times I've encountered them, the telepathic clarity was way better than words, way better than language. You
Yeah.
can communicate ideas almost instantly.
And speaking of a million years of evolution, you have also shared with us before that you do see a very positive future coming for humanity eventually.
Yeah. So regardless of what timeline was happening, what I did see is eventually Earth is incredibly beautiful, and it's not that far off. And I saw it in 100 years, in 1,000 years, in 10,000 years. And Earth is basically an angelic planet. It's physical, but it's very high vibrational. It goes from the fifth dimension, and it continues to evolve apparently. And it is very, very beautiful. And people there are beautiful. Everything's beautiful. The people are beautiful. There's technology that's beautiful. The landscapes are incredible. It's a very amazing place.
What you've said before is that it's like you're perceiving Earth as a being herself or itself, and that Earth is evolving the same way we.
Just as people do. And what I saw was a cycle where Earth ascends, let's call it, or makes these big jumps. And it doesn't happen very often, but when it happens, it takes a lot of that life with her to that another dimension. And I sort of was explained to me in a way that I can understand. It was almost like reincarnation. Like when we pass over, we go to a different level of consciousness, of vibration. Maybe we go into our etheric body, and that the Earth was at a stage where it was going to do something similar.
Mhm.
And Earth had done similar things in the past, you know, and Earth's had intelligent life on it for a very long time, and it will continue to do so.
Mhm.
So I saw it as Earth was very, very much alive. The sun is very much alive. These are beings. Um, and there's a lot of life on Earth that we don't know about, or amongst us. We think about animal life in our life, but there's also other intelligent life on Earth. We just don't perceive it. It's inside of the Earth, or maybe it's cloaked, things like that. So I did see that cloaking technology it's not like it's sort of like Star Trek, maybe. They can actually shift into another slightly different dimension. And then you could just fly right through them. And so I think there are civilizations on Earth that we can't perceive. But we see them. We see them pop out of the ocean sometimes. We see all kinds of different ships and
Yeah.
things seem to be very here, not so much there.
Right. Seems very crazy to our down to earth kind of minds. But on the other hand, what we're doing right now with a Zoom meeting is pretty magical and fantastic in itself. How the heck the internet works, I have not a clue. It doesn't seem like it fits at all with Newtonian physics.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things with computers, for example, where no one actually knows how it works.
Really?
Everyone's really confused about AI. The people building it don't know how it works.
No kidding.
We
Wow.
chip design,
That's kind
and
of
we've been using AI for chip design for so long that there's no single human that could build a chip without it. So we don't actually know why those optimizations work and things like that. So we're out there building things, and that's what's funny. It's like trust the science. They say all the time. Science is almost catching up with things that we invent that we don't even know how they work. Science will basically understand how AI works when AI has already surpassed it. We'll have to ask AI how it works at that point.
Wow.
So, we're in all these areas where we're building incredible things, and not any one human understands it, but as a collective, as systems that pre-exist that we've added onto it, they sort of work.
Mhm.
And so, we're already in that fuzzy area, but I think because life can be so basic, we don't even think about those things, you know? And so now when somebody says something extraordinary is happening, you know, until it happens to you, you know, you don't know how to judge it. And that was how I was. Somebody told me the story I'm telling you, you know, 5, 6 years ago, I would be like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. But now I'm like, oh no, it's happening, you know? I'm like, I don't care what anyone thinks. I've experienced it.
Which kind of tells us that who knows what could be down the pike for any of us.
Yeah, I think there's so much coming that we can't even imagine what's going to happen.
The other night when we were together, you said you see not very long from now, a time when people, maybe some of us alive now, will live for hundreds of years.
It looked like that sort of reincarnation of Earth, or that split, let's call it. I saw it happening soon in 2027. I was told that those timelines could change and things, but at this point, it's almost not really going to change. So, well, I guess you know, I'll see with everyone else, right?
Yeah.
You know, and that's the whole thing. You know, I listen and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll find out, right?
Yeah.
But what I saw was a very clear split, and there was almost two Earths. I mean, not almost, there was two Earths right next to each other, and one was very physical, was like the body of Earth, and one was the sort of spirit or the etheric body of Earth. It was a non-physical. But when you were on that Earth, it would feel just as physical. You wouldn't almost be able to tell. It's like when you're in your light body on one of these ships, those other beings are in their light body too, and it is physical for them in that dimension because you're a frequency matched to that dimension. So in that Earth, we would be physical. And I saw on that Earth that the frequencies is so much higher. From this point of view, it would feel non-physical, but from that point of view, it was, and that people would live longer.
Would the structure that we have around us look the same, do you think? I mean, like houses and, you know, businesses.
I saw in the beginning, it was the same. I saw over time, it was more, everything was around nature. And then there was sort of these facilities, these like community centers, you could call them, that were very beautiful. They almost looked like temples. That would continue to grow into those became, let's call it cities and things like that, you know, with a lot of time. But like the old way of doing things, I seem to have stopped completely on that Earth.
It's not like there was a great big landfill and everything was dug up and put down there. It's more like the movie changed.
Yeah, it was just a different reality. I mean, it seemed like there were still these houses would still be here in certain cities and things like that. But with time, we would migrate to these new ways of living. So it seemed like a very somewhat slow evolution, but in some ways not. You know, there was things were given to us that were blowing everyone's minds.
Well, I put it on my calendar, so you know, in 2027, we'll see what happens. I mean,
we'll check back in then.
And I know that you'll feel the same way. Like it happens, woo, or it doesn't happen, woo. You know, it's just like
I don't know. You know,
we'll see. We're all learning together here.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with this stuff is like the only way for maybe someone like me to do channeling and like all this stuff is for me to be open to the possibility that I don't know anything.
Yeah.
If I'm attached to that, this is going to happen or that's going to happen or this is real, that's not real. It's not healthy for me, you know, and I think that's the thing. So there's obviously an ability to bring through information that seems to be mostly correct all the time. Cool. I'll give it. But what happens with that and how we interpret it is up to the people, you know, to receive it. So I treat that with myself the same way. You know, I got all this information. Okay. Let me sit with it and see what happens, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe I will adjust certain things into my life because they're obviously good advice. Cool. I'll take it.
Right.
You know,
a lot of spiritual teachers talk about just practicing presence, you know, and being here in the here and now, like Eckhart Tolle or people like that. And so what's your view of that? And how does that seem so in your life too?
It's exciting to talk about all that stuff. That's the fun part. That's like the meat on the bone. Yeah. But I think what these spiritual people are saying is actually important. It's like if you're not living your life, you're living in fantasy land in the future, or you're punishing yourself in the past. You're not living, man. Like, this world is incredible. You can do anything you want. And yes, spirituality might be able to help you believe in yourself, might be help you let go of your past, to heal, to dream bigger. Cool. All that's real. With or without spirituality, the reality is in this moment, we are alive. We are doing something. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I can spend the next hour and do something. I can clean my house. I can build a new project. I can call someone on the phone I haven't talked to. I have free will in this moment. And that's where all your power is at.
Mm-hmm.
Your power is not knowing the future. It's sort of cool. And maybe you can adjust some stuff just in case. And the power is not in ruminating. You know, ruminating leads to depression and like sadness. So we need to get to the present moment. And so these spiritual teachers, they're super right, actually. That's where we should be focused. Aliens or not, spiritual beings or not. You want to create a life worth living, you do it in this moment.
That sounds like really good advice. We probably should wrap it up here pretty soon.
Yeah.
I have a
Well,
question.
let's wrap it up on that if we can.
Good.
Well,
Go ahead.
If
Well,
it's
I was
yeah.
just going to ask you one question. So you do these public channelings, you teach with your platform, the Awaken platform.
Mhm.
Do you have a sense that you're participating in rising the consciousness of the world, or that you're actively engaged in doing that? Do you feel that for yourself?
Yeah, in some ways. I would like to do more of it, to be honest. I'm still running a few tech companies. And so, I get involved in Awaken and I do a bunch of cool stuff. And then I have to sort of dip out and
Yeah.
take care of my other stuff, that pays my bills and all that good stuff. And what I've done for me personally is brought a lot of what I've learned into those other businesses as far as to keep it more fun and exciting and maybe build things I wouldn't have built before. Um, but when I look at Awakening and my like personal contribution, um, I think I make myself available at certain times to do stuff, and I think that's a contribution. And I don't put a lot of pressure on myself to do. I have to do this because if I don't do that, then I don't believe it's like that. I think
mm-hmm.
things are probably perfect as they are. If you feel called to do something, do it. If you don't feel
Mm.
like, don't do it. Sometimes I feel like doing awakening and building out the next section of the site or something, or having a public channeling or doing one-on-ones, and I do them. And then sometimes I don't feel like doing it. I feel like maybe working on something else in my life. So I think that's the thing where it's would have, could have, should have, or you should do this, or you should do that, or my guides told me I have to do this. I don't buy it. I think it's more about how do you want to contribute in society, in your own life, people around you. It's up to you, and then that's your power. And I think we don't really give our power away to spiritual beings if they're
Mm-hmm.
loving and nice. I think they're here to empower us to express ourselves however we want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the long term, it's about you. It's about you at the end of the day. It's just your journey through time. It's bigger than Earth. Whatever happens,
And Adrian, I know you're a busy guy. I'm just wondering if there's anything for viewers that you wanted to say. Do you do any private channelings or sessions anymore? Do you want to invite that? Do you want to suggest where people might go to see more about you and your work?
I'm gonna be honest, I have nothing to pitch. Yes, I
Okay,
have sessions.
that's great. That's
But
great.
what I'd really like people to do, if they're having experiences and they want to get it under control, that channeling classes I made available is free.
Uh-huh.
You can find it on Awaken.world. If they want to like hear more crazy stories and channelings, they can find us on Instagram at Awaken.world IG. Um, that's all together. And I think that's where they can interact with this work that I'm doing. And I think there's a lot of stuff from a lot of people now. I think it's really opening up
Mhm.
and it's exciting. So I created that class for people to have a way to connect to their own guidance and go on that journey for themselves instead of hear about it. Make their own mistakes, everything. I think that's the really important part
Right.
is I can tell you all day long all kinds of crazy things that I've seen and experienced and thought about. But I think when the journey is your own, that's really exciting. And so I think that's where I would put people.
Okay.
It's a free class, take it, see what happens. I've seen people that have taken it, gone out and done stuff, channeled card decks and, or changed their life or do something cool or change their perspective. And it's always sort of fascinating to check in on those people and see
Yeah.
what.
Yeah. And if somebody was watching and said, I think I'd like to buy a tech company, would you want to sell your company?
I think if they could buy my tent company, they'll know how to buy it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. Perfect. All
Okay.
right. Well, thank you so much for
Okay.
having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. And it's always a pleasure to speak with you. It's your good nature and your big smile, says it all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the invite. So thank you
Okay.
so much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for watching. And if you like this kind of content, these deep conversations, open door, open mind, open heart looks at people's lives and what's going on in the world today from a spiritual point of view, then please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you.